start to think about what you can do to get the kinds of skills you need in your organization if you were recruiting volunteers in the same way that you would if you were recruiting a highly technical staff person. You want to be clear about the work that needs to be done, define the skills you need, write a position description that really focuses on those skills, and then describe the impact that this person's going to have by completing the task or the project that you're asking them to do. You post it on listing sites, not with a general category, not with your agency name and needs volunteers, but with a skill name that's very specific to the kind of skill that you're trying to find. So social worker for women's shelter needed 2 times a week or something like that. MSW needed, electrician needed for periodic work for low-income residents of Kitsap County. That kind of a very specific title. And then one of the things you can do is you can send it to professionals that you know who work with people who have that skill, work in that in a field where that skill is used, or might have that skill themselves, and really do targeted networking with people who are really proximate. If they don't have the skill, then they are next to people who have that skill. You obviously can continue to do the outreach to churches, the listing on the United Way site and other Volunteer Match and other sites. Continue to do the outreach to the military. But if you really target your listings to be very specific to the task, it will make it much more likely that you'll find the person with exactly the skill that you're looking for. So we're getting to the challenging part of working with volunteers, which is matching volunteers. The worst situation is you get a square peg in your round hole, right? You make an agreement with somebody, you welcome them into your organization, you give of your time, staff time, other volunteers' time to get them kind of oriented and in your organization, and then you find out, boy, this is not going to work. This is not a good match. So how do you determine whether you have a good fit? One of the things you need to do is you need to make sure before you agree that the person is in your volunteer role that you have a discussion with them. And that's a little bit different than the way we work with program volunteers. But program volunteers were like, come on down, right? All comers. And we do very little, you might do background checks, but we do very little screening to make sure that they're that round peg for our round hole. And with skill-based volunteers, you really have to do that one-on-one conversation. It could be a phone conversation if for some reason this is a distance volunteering situation, but it needs to be one-on-one. There are 3 positive outcomes of that conversation. One is you both determine that this is a good fit, the best you can tell right now, and you decide to go ahead with it. The second is you both determine, or just you determine, it's not a good fit. And you tell the person, I'm sorry, I really thank you for responding to our request, but I think this is not the best match for you. And you might have another opportunity that you could, in your general volunteerism, that you could direct that person to. But that is a point of truth right there. You do not want to take on a volunteer who's going to be that square peg in the round hole, right? Because it's just going to cost you time and effort, and it's not going to be good for that person either. The third outcome is that you agree that you need to do some more work, potentially on both sides, to determine whether it's a good fit. And that may mean that you need to get a little bit clearer about what the requirements are, the position that you're making available, what the timeline is, what support you're able to provide that person. That person may need to get a little bit clearer themselves about their availability and their ability to make a commitment to your organization. That's a good outcome too. But all of these are good outcomes, including the outcome that is, thank you very much, but no. That's a good outcome too. And that's really hard for us because we're people, right? We want to be nice to everybody. We want everybody to like us. We want to say yes to everybody all the time. And so it can be very, very difficult to learn how to do that. So what do you think makes for a good fit?
Someone who can get the job done.
Somebody who can get the job done? What else is important to you?
It depends on the organization. So for me, it has to be women that, most of my, well, 99% of my volunteers are women. And it's women that have the personality to say, yes, you're in a bad spot right now, but guess what? We could work from here to there. So it really is how they're looking at, objectively looking at the situation.
Okay, that's very important what you just said, because lots of times it's not just about whether they have that credential or that skill or that experience. Often it's about attitude and the behaviors that they're going to bring into your program, into your agency. And behaviors can be much more important than the hard skills. With our volunteers, we teach them a set of behaviors that, or we talk to them about a set of behaviors that we think are most important when they're doing work with nonprofit organizations. And it has nothing to do with what business school they graduated from, or what their VP title was, or what their salary was. None of that matters. What matters most is that they're appreciative. When they enter an organization, they start with a standpoint that says, whatever the struggles are in this organization, whatever they're not doing well, there's a lot they're succeeding at, and I'm going to go in and appreciate what the success that this organization has had. And then the second thing is they're going to listen to the organization. They're not going to assume that they've got the right answer on day one. They're going to listen and learn, and they're going to speak in a way where the organization can understand them. So they learn the organization's language. They don't expect the organization to learn their language. Because lots of times you can get people with professional skills who will start just kind of talking the talk that they're used to in their business environment. And you take somebody with tech skills, right away you're like, oh, they lost me on the second sentence, right? So you want to get somebody who has behaviors that are going to make them that round peg in the round hole. And this is a way to think about what you're doing when you're trying to match a volunteer with your organization. It really is a two-sided match, and it has to work for both sides. So on the volunteer side, they have certain values about who they want to help or what issues they care about. And you have a mission, a staff that's focused on a particular outcome that you're trying to achieve. You have a staff that's composed in a certain way, a certain diversity or skills that are diverse. And then you have the people that you're serving on your side. And you have to make sure that their kind of values match well with your organization's character and mission. Then they have values about a workplace culture. How do they work in the workplace, and what are their expectations? And you have an organizational culture. You may have a very formalized culture where everything is done by the book. There are rules to the way things work. People stay in their very specific roles and don't get outside those roles. Or you may have a very informal culture, and everybody's sort of doing all kinds of work across boundaries. They're very interactive, very collegial. And you need to know whether this person can work within your culture. They're going to have some preferences about how they use their skills and how they develop their skills. And you're going to have some needs that you're going to need to get met and some limitations to what you can do to support that person. So for instance, I might be able to support somebody who has, let's say, graphics as a skill. I might be able to take somebody who has a little bit of graphic skill and help them get a little more graphic skill working for my organization, or get some experience working for my organization. But I'm not going to take somebody who wants to learn how to be a graphic artist, pay you to send them to school, have them do all of our stuff wrong the first time, have to redo it, right? That's not worth it to me. So you have to figure out how much are you willing to give to meet their needs, and part of the reason they're volunteering is to build kind of a greater professional platform for themselves. So we're going to practice that ping pong exercise.
Calm and secure. I think it's great to fit into
Fancy life. I'd like to operate
You can do the skills match in a short period of time. You've just done it in 5 minutes. You can kind of get the skills match part of it. but you have to really dig a little deeper, get to know the person a little bit more in order to figure out whether this person's kind of underlying motivation for volunteering is a good match for your organization, and whether they're going to be values-wise and culture-wise a good match for your organization. The other thing that can be difficult about doing the skills match is that sometimes you're talking to people who have spent their careers in the corporate sector, and it can be difficult to map corporate skills over to the nonprofit sector. Just the terminology can be different, but most importantly, the scale is so different. So somebody will talk about what they did in an organization, and much of the terminology they use may not translate into your organization, but even more importantly, they were a part of a team of 300. In the nonprofit sector, we don't have teams of 300, we rarely have organizations of 300. So just the scale that people work at can make it a little bit difficult to figure out how they're going to work in a smaller environment, and if they're going to be able to handle the fact that nonprofits are generally such resource poor and time-strapped environments, and it can be difficult to work in that environment. There is a tool that I want to point out to you that was developed by the Taproot Foundation called the Competencies Map. And you can go to their website, and I've given, it's a little hard to find, so I've given you the kind of directions as to how to get there. So it's Taproot Foundation, then Lead Pro Bono, then Resources, and then the Competency Map. And you can either search for a nonprofit need, like a fundraising, a fundraiser or a grant writer, and it will crosswalk it over to who in the corporate sector has the skills necessary for that job. Or you can look up a job title, a corporate job title, like a general manager or VP for sales, and it will tell you what nonprofit jobs are a good match for people who are in those roles.